Alright, we're doing a fluid flush, 2005 Colorado, same truck that been doing some small stuff on. I figured I don't know the last time the coolant's been changed, so we're going to flush the fluid. So one thing important, the reservoir does not have a drain plug, neither does the radiator. So the reservoir's got to be pumped, and the radiator, we're going to have to remove the lower hose, which I really don't like doing because, you know, disturbing things, you're liable to create another problem. But that's the only option. So that's what we're going to do, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I've emptied out the reservoir, pumping it out, and the next step is the radiator. I'm going to pump as much out of the radiator as I can before I pull the drain plug on the bottom. A, because I can more easily control where the fluid goes so I don't pollute anything, and B, because I can more easily control the fluid, where the fluid goes so I don't pollute anything. When you let it go on the bottom, you kind of just left to catch it what you can catch, kind of thing. And if it spills over, you're done. If you do it from the top, you can do it more slowly, but with more control. So let's see how it works. All right, so I've driven the truck about an hour. It's a 10-minute flush, and it says you can drive it 3 to 6 hours. It's a Prestone Radiator Flush and Cleaner. But I don't have enough time, and the way my schedule is, I can't do 3 to 6 hours and then come back and do a flush. So I drove around for about an hour, and now I'm waiting on the engine to cool off. So let's see what the temperature is. I'd say we're safe to go ahead and take the flush out. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to drain the flush. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to drain the flush and then wait for it to get cool, or excuse me. First you're supposed to drain the flush and then fill the system back up with water and then run it back up to hot for about 10 minutes and then turn it back off and then flush it again, and then you can put your normal stuff. This takes Dex Cool or Dex Grind, depending on whatever type of your engine takes. I'm up to, let's see, Dex Cool. Yeah, that's what the GM calls for. So anyway, I'll fill that back up whenever we finally get done. But first we've got to do the water flush and get all the bad stuff, or get the acid or whatever was put into it to clean it out, get it out so that it's not in the system going forward. So we're going to do that, and we'll be back. All right, so we're back. So for some reason, this model, or these models, don't have a drain plug, so you've got to remove the lower hose coming into the radiator, basically the hose that goes in the engine block to drain. It's dripping a little bit because I sprayed some water earlier trying to expedite the process, but we'll see how this goes. Basically, you squeeze these two clips, pull them back, and then that's the drain hose. So, and you got to pull the hose off, of course. So let's see how this goes. All right, you see the water's coming out. I got it draining into this oil pan. So let it drain. Based on the last time, this is plenty to, the capacity of the oil pan is enough to hold what the radiator can hold. So we'll sit here and let it drip out and fill it with water. Let's see what happens. Something reminded me that it's important to do. It's important to wait and let this thing completely get all the water out of it. See, there's still water sitting in the block. So it's going to slowly come out. I mean, all of it's not going to come out, obviously. There's still going to be some left, but what you want to try to get as much out as possible. So it's still running into the pan, but there's still water trickling out of the block. And so what I'll do is I'll let it sit here and I'll come back in another 10 minutes and I'll check. And when it starts to drip is when I consider it done. All right, so let's put it on hold and come back in a little bit. Something to do while we're waiting. The foolproof method, I guess, would be to get a thermometer and stick it in the radiator and verify that the temperature of the water, the coolant, is low enough. You think about coffee, gets to, I think it's 150 or 160, maybe as high as 180. It never gets quite to boiling. But I just guesstimated. Now, I'm by no means recommending this, but you just kind of guess. And now it's going to, of course, read nothing because there's hardly any temperature left. But if you consider that the midway is considered normal operating, so normal operating is somewhere around 200 degrees. So if you consider the mid hash mark around 200, consider the quarter hash mark around 150, because it's not an exact. Alright, so consider that's about 150. So anything under 150 you can touch and it probably won't hurt you. So that's kind of what I went by. Is I come out here earlier, it was still in between the midpoint and the quarter point. I said, that's probably a little too hot. It still could be, some parts of it, depending on what come out of the block, could still be close to boiling. So I didn't want to do it, and what you want to do is just wait until the temperature gets to where something you're comfortable with touching. I just know from another vehicle, about, another Chevy vehicle, I should say, about what this was. I've got a Escalade that I kind of got on the wrong side of that to come out, and it didn't burn me, but it was more than I was comfortable with. So I knew for this time that I needed to be somewhat lower. So not an exact science, and not the same vehicle by vehicle for sure, but just kind of a good way to guesstimate and get your bearings as to when you're comfortable with changing the coolant. All right, so I'm still waiting on the drip to finish, and then once we do that, we're going to flush it with water. With that, one more thing to talk about. This was a good test by clearing the radiator, draining the fluid, to see if the overflow reservoir is actually functioning properly, if the hoses are not clogged and that it's actually cycling. So, case in point, I filled this up, filled it up with water, and the water was dingy whenever it come out. So that means that when the engine's getting hot, it's cycling back and forth with the overflow reservoir like it's supposed to. So that means we're fully functioning there. We don't have any problems. So that's another thing to make sure you check out, and you can use this same flush to check that whenever you fill it up, it's got clean, clear water in it, and when you go and drive it like an hour like I did, you can see that the engine has used the reservoir and that it's mixed with whatever gunk is getting cleaned out of here. It's in there now too, and so we had to pump that out, but it's also a good test to make sure that it's operating as it's supposed to. All right, so you can see we are ready to go. We're back to dripping. So now it's time to plug her back up. All right, so here you see putting tap water back into it. We're gonna fill the system up and then let it run, get back hot, and that's just basically get all the remaining clean air out before you put your Dexcool or your antifreeze or whatever you put back in there, and get ready to run for a long time. So once this is filled up, we're gonna crank it up and run. All right, so we've put the cleaner in, flushed it, flushed the cleaner out with water, and now I've got to get the water out, and then after we get the water out, we'll be ready to put the new Dexcool in it and get this baby back to operating temperature. All right, so you can see water's coming out. This is the flush. We're flushing out the concentrate cleaner, and so this is the used to be clean, once formerly known as clean water, flushing out of the system. And after this, we'll be ready to go. All right, we got the Dexcool in there. 50-50 mix is what it recommends, so that's what we got it at, 50-50. and it should be just a second that it'll kick into the reservoir. So looks like we're good. It's a hot day, it's a hot night. That's normal operating temperature for this. Looks like the flush was successful. It actually is normally this time of night even, it'll get a little bit hotter, so there was some kind of coolant issue with it. So it's fixed it enough to where it's outside of my worry category, and it's back to normal. And whenever the reservoir kicks in and it drops the temperature back down, it'll be fine. So here we are, another successful job from Macology.